The air in the Arizona desert was a physical thing, shimmering off the endless black ribbon of asphalt and tasting like copper dust and regret. Elias Thorne, CEO of the solar energy giant Solara Dynamics, watched the temperature gauge on his armored company vehicle tick relentlessly toward the red line. The massive truck, designed to haul specialized turbine components across the arid landscape, had shuddered, coughed a final, mechanical death rattle, and now sat, inert and mocking, 10 miles from the nearest cell signal repeater. Elias was a man who had built a $9 billion empire on the principle of precision, on the promise that his solar farms would deliver power to millions with zero downtime. Now, his own personal mission to secure a vital partnership with the state's largest utility was 40 minutes from disaster, trapped by his own company's unreliable machinery. He had sent his driver ahead in a borrowed Jeep to alert the plant, believing he could handle the final leg himself, wanting to feel the ground his empire stood upon. Hubris, he thought, stepping out into the brutal, 115-degree heat. The smell of burning oil and hot metal hit him like a punch. He checked his satellite phone. Nothing. He stared at the tangled mess beneath the raised hood. A wall of hot air washed over him. He knew circuitry and quarterly reports, not combustion chambers. Somewhere in that organized chaos of wires and coolant lines, something fundamental had simply given up. As Elias stood, a solitary figure moving against the vast, unforgiving landscape, he heard a sound, not the roar of a semi, but the light, rhythmic whir of bicycle gears. A small white boy, no older than 10, pedaled into view on a battered mountain bike. He wore a faded, oil-stained t-shirt, cut-off jeans, and thick, smudged goggles perched on his forehead. He coasted to a stop beside the towering, disabled truck. Caleb Cal Flynn was a ghost of a boy, wiry and pale beneath a layer of dust, but his eyes, a shocking, clear blue, were sharp and observant. He looked less intimidated by the CEO's tailored suit and the massive, expensive machine than Elias looked by the engine itself. Cal stared at the engine for a long moment, not at the steam, but at the subtle, discordant way the cooling fan had finally stopped spinning. "Sir," the boy said, his voice scratchy but confident, "your primary coolant pump just seized, and your alternator belt is frayed down to the weave." Elias frowned, crossing his arms. "That's an excellent diagnosis, son. But my driver is already on the way with a repair team. I need a tow, not a lecture." Cal tilted his head, the goggles catching the sun. He looked not at the corporate emblem on the door, but at the problem. "A tow is an hour. A full replacement is 4. You got a meeting. You look like a man who doesn't like to be late." He gestured to a slight, almost imperceptible tremor running through the chassis. "It's making a hollow chatter sound in the auxiliary lines. That's not just a pump failure. It's a pressure issue. Something's compromised the metallurgy inside the pump casing. I can bypass the pump and reroute the coolant flow through the auxiliary radiator. It'll run for about 2 hours, long enough to get you to the plant." Elias was stunned. The boy spoke the language of advanced engineering, a dialect only his top R&D people understood. He looked down at the child's small, grease-caked hands, then back at the expensive, ruined equipment. "And what do you want for this, young man? I can pay you well." Cal met his gaze with an earnestness that bordered on fierce. He took a deep, deliberate breath and said the 5 words that would change everything. "I have no cash, but I can fix your turbine." Elias stepped back, yielding the space. "Show me." Cal, without ceremony, pulled a worn leather pouch from his bike basket. He produced a pair of specialized, miniature wrenches, a roll of silver duct tape that looked old enough to be an heirloom, and, impossibly, a bent nickel-plated paperclip. He worked with the focused intensity of a surgeon, his movements economical and precise. He didn't consult a manual or hesitate. He listened. He stripped the alternator belt, used the paperclip to bridge a circuit on the auxiliary relay box, and with the dexterity of a jeweler, used the duct tape to create a high-pressure seal around a small, cracked hose he'd spotted near the manifold. He was in and out of the engine bay in under 15 minutes. "Try it now, sir," Cal instructed, wiping a streak of oil across his already grimy cheek. Elias climbed back in. He turned the key. The engine roared to life, a deep, steady, imperfect rumble, but a rumble nonetheless. It was a makeshift miracle powered by ingenuity and tape. He got out, his skepticism replaced by awe. "How? How did you know to do that? And what was that paperclip for?" "Electricity moves like water, sir," Cal explained simply. "It follows the path of least resistance. The paperclip was a bypass. As for the fix, I just listened. The chatter sounded like microscopic metal fatigue, a specific resonant frequency. You don't fix that with a wrench. You fix it by understanding the internal vibration loop. Elias pulled out his wallet, already calculating how many thousands of dollars this boy had saved him in time and resources. That was incredible. I'm giving you $1,000. Cal shook his head, pushing the offered bills away. I can't take your money, sir. I'm not a professional. I helped because you needed help and because the machine was hurting. My father always said, your hands are a reflection of your character. Use them for pride, not greed. Responsibility, not hustle. Who is your father, Cal? Elias asked, suddenly seeing a depth in the boy that went beyond mechanics. The boy's face clouded over, his blue eyes distant. He was Dr. Julian Flynn. He worked at your company, Solar Dynamics, in R&D, until about 6 months ago. He invented the resonant loop turbine regulator, the core tech that powers your new Phoenix generation solar farms. They said he was brilliant, but then they said he wasn't. They said he crashed his old truck on this road, drunk, and that's why his patent was shelved. But he didn't drink. He just fixed things. Cal pointed at the engine block. That chatter I heard? It's the sound of a bad component. A cheap knockoff. It's the sound of them putting parts into your trucks that are designed to fail just outside the warranty window. It's the same sound his old truck made right before. He didn't finish the sentence. The temperature dropped 10 degrees around Elias. He wasn't just late for a meeting anymore. He was staring at a potential corporate catastrophe built on a human tragedy. The paperclip fix was a clue. The chatter was a confession. Cal, Elias said, his voice low and serious. I need you to come with me. Not as an employee, but as an auditor. You can hear things I can't. If my own company betrayed a man like your father, I need to know. And I promise you, we will finish what he started. The audition of the internal vibration loop. The Solar Dynamics Phoenix plant was a gleaming, glass and steel cathedral of sustainable power, a stark contrast to the desert dust that coated the tires of Elias's fixed truck. Elias brought Cal straight to the secure R&D level, bypassing his stunned executives. Damon Vance, Solar's head of research and chief operating officer, a man whose ambition was only matched by his immaculate white linen suits, met them at the entrance to the automated assembly line. Damon was the heir apparent, groomed by the board, and the man who had officially dismissed Dr. Julian Flynn's work. Elias, what in God's name happened to the truck? And who is this guest? Damon demanded, visibly recoiling from Cal's grease-stained clothes. This is Cal Flynn, Elias introduced, his eyes steady on Damon. He just saved my meeting, and he's here to look at the new precision rotor assembly that we've been using in the trucks and the early turbine models. Damon's composure flickered, a brief, cold panic behind his practiced smile. That assembly is perfect, Elias. Tested, certified. We're about to put in a $400 million order. Why the delay? Elias ignored him, leading Cal onto the line. The massive, sophisticated robotic arms were assembling the rotor assemblies at a mind-numbing speed. Cal, Elias said, pointing to a huge, half-finished turbine housing. Tell me what you hear. The boy stood motionless, closing his eyes. The roar of the machinery, the hiss of hydraulics, the grinding of metal. It was a cacophony to Elias. But for Cal, it was a discordant symphony. He cocked his head, focusing. He walked toward an automated calibration station, where a high-tech sensor was giving a green light to every rotor that passed. Cal stopped inches from the machine. It's wrong, he whispered. The sensor is lying. It's supposed to calibrate at 1.8 gigahertz, but it's set to a dulling frequency, 1.9. It's letting through a vibration that is too high, a microscopic wobble that will tear the bearings apart in about 800 hours of operation. It's planned obsolescence, Mr. Thorne. Except this isn't a toaster oven. It's a massive turbine. That wobble will cause catastrophic failure. Damon Vance scoffed loudly. Elias, this is insane. You're taking the word of a child over millions in certified testing. I'm taking the word of the man who fixed my $200,000 truck with a paperclip. Damon, Elias retorted, his voice steel. Show me the logs for the assembly's stress testing data for the last 6 months. The next 3 hours were a blur of encrypted files and escalating tension. Cal's analysis was terrifyingly precise. The design flaw wasn't an accident. It was an intentional sabotage built into the component specifications. Elias traced the components back to a small, newly formed shell company, Apex Tech, which was undercutting all his legitimate suppliers. The design for the faulty component, the one causing the fatal chatter, was suspiciously similar to a discarded, early draft of Dr. Julian Flynn's regulator. It's his design, Cal breathed, looking at a C80 rendering. His notes were all about how not to build it. How a slight modification to the molecular structure of the copper alloy would create a resonant weakness. He called it the Flynn failure point. They took his notes on how to avoid failure and used them to engineer it. Elias stared at the files. The intellectual property theft, the massive safety risk, and the deliberate betrayal. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. Dr. Julian Flynn hadn't crashed his truck drunk. His truck, fitted with the early, flawed Apex Tech component, had been engineered to fail. They hadn't just stolen his patent. They had silenced the inventor to cover the theft. Damon Vance, as head of R&D, was the only person with access to Flynn's full, unreleased research. The betrayal was complete. The corporate crossroads and the political twist. Elias knew he had to act immediately. The $400 million order was set to be finalized at the board meeting the next morning. If he signed off, he would be legally approving the use of knowingly faulty, dangerous components. He faced Damon Vance in his office, the boy, Cal, sitting quietly on the leather sofa, sketching circuitry on a legal pad. Apex Tech is owned by a holding company called Cerberus, Elias stated, his tone flat, devoid of emotion. And Cerberus is largely funded by your father's political action committee, Damon. Did you really think I wouldn't check the ownership on a company that magically appeared to undercut our suppliers by 40%? Damon shed his facade. His face contorted into a mask of pure, vicious contempt. Julian Flynn was a drunk fantasist. His regulator was too expensive, too difficult to manufacture at scale. We'd be out of business in a year. Damon swept his hand around the luxurious office. This is efficiency. This is profitability. The board loves me because I deliver. You're too busy trying to be a saint, Elias, clinging to your integrity. I gave you an edge. I was supposed to replace you. You murdered a man and endangered millions of lives just to pad your margins. And what are you going to do now? Stop the supply chain? You pull that order. You halt production on all 30 new solar farms. Solaris stock will plummet. The board will vote you out by noon. And guess who steps in? Me. And my primary investor, Senator Royce, will ensure the investigations go nowhere. You've already got a little witness problem, Elias. A white boy with no mother and a dead, disgraced father who lives off the grid. Who is going to believe him? Your word against a COO and a sitting senator. The door burst open. It was Senator Royce himself, flanked by two imposing security men. A planned confrontation. Elias, the senator said, his voice smooth and dangerous. Damon informed me about the discrepancy. I'm prepared to handle this discreetly. We will make this boy, Cal, a ward of the state. He's clearly traumatized. We'll give him a full ride to any university of his choice. We'll even republish his father's work as a posthumous collaboration with Damon. You just sign the order, approve the $400 million, and walk away with your integrity intact. It was a simple oversight, Elias. No one needs to die over a simple oversight. My integrity is not intact, Senator, Elias said, his voice shaking with righteous fury. And the cost of a part is never measured in money. It's measured in trust. As Elias stood his ground, one of the senator's security men moved swiftly, grabbing Cal, who let out a startled cry. The legal pad with his father's designs slipped to the floor. You've crossed a line, Senator, Elias roared. You've made this personal. You've threatened a child. He's a liability, Elias, Damon sneered. And the board will thank me for neutralizing him. The resonant loop and the final triumph. The next 20 minutes were a calculated dance of power. Elias, using his internal security access, locked the R&D wing. Damon and Senator Royce were trapped. While the senator's men tried to hack the electronic locks, Elias rushed to a server room. Cal, what was the name of your father's finished design? The thing that would make his work untouchable. Cal, rubbing his arm, his eyes wide but still sharp, shouted, the resonant loop regulator. It was supposed to be the final version of the firmware. It makes the turbine self-correct before failure. It's on an old flash drive. He called it Phoenix Rising. He said he hit it on the least important system in the whole plant. Elias thought fast. The least important system. Not the main servers, not R&D. He ran to the plant's HVAC control room, an old, neglected system housed in a basement sublevel. He found the system. An ancient desktop was running the entire ventilation grid. Taped beneath the keyboard was a tiny, faded USB drive. Phoenix Rising. He plugged it into the main server. He had seconds. He didn't just upload the firmware. He uploaded a self-diagnostic patch embedded with Dr. Flynn's code. The patch immediately began scanning the entire plant systems for the Flynn failure point. Simultaneously, he called the emergency board meeting, patched through his camera feed, and activated the plant's internal alarm, broadcasting his voice through the loudspeakers. This is Elias Thorne. I am officially halting the $400 million parts order. The precision rotor assembly is defective. It contains an intentional design flaw, a resonant weakness, that will lead to catastrophic failure in 800 hours. The flaw was engineered by Damon Vance, in collusion with an external political and criminal network, to profit from replacement contracts and silence the original inventor, Dr. Julian Flynn, whom they also murdered. The evidence is now compiling on the main servers, traceable to Damon Vance's private network. On cue, the lights in the main assembly bay began to flash violently. The new diagnostic patch, now active, was screaming red. Every single rotor assembly on the line, every one passing the dulling frequency test, was now tagged with a massive digital alert, flaw detected. Cataclysmic failure imminent. The board members, watching on their screens, saw the undeniable, real-time evidence of the betrayal. Damon Vance, now pale with fury and disbelief, tried to run, but Solara's head of internal security, who had been quietly alerted by Elias, was waiting. Senator Royce, realizing the political fallout of a televised plant shutdown and a murder investigation, tried to leverage his connections, but the evidence, broadcast live, was already leaking across social media, the story of the 10-year-old white boy who heard machines cry spreading like wildfire. The promise of tomorrow. 6 months later, the dust had settled, but Solara Dynamics was forever changed. The stock price took a hit, but Elias's transparency and moral courage won over the public and, eventually, the remaining principled members of the board. Damon Vance and his accomplices were facing criminal charges. The senator had resigned in disgrace. Elias Thorne stood beside Caleb Flynn in a brightly lit auditorium in Phoenix. Cal, dressed in a new, slightly too large suit, looked out at the assembled crowd of students and engineers. Elias had not just hired Cal. He had made him an official consultant. More importantly, he had established the Dr. Julian Flynn Innovation Fund, dedicated to funding young inventors and protecting their intellectual property. Dr. Flynn's design, the resonant loop regulator, has been fully implemented across our entire fleet, Elias announced to the cheers. It is the future of green energy, a system built on integrity. And today, we honor the man who designed it, and the young man who ensured his legacy. Cal approached the podium, clutching a polished, heavy nickel-plated paperclip, the one he had used to save Elias's truck. My dad always said, Cal spoke, his voice clear and steady, to listen before you fix and understand before you build. They thought his ideas were worthless because they were expensive, but a machine built on a lie will always break. A machine built on truth will run forever. As he stepped down, Elias put a hand on his shoulder. They walked together past the rows of future inventors, past the new, clean, safe turbines, machines that now sang a smooth, true note. The road ahead for Solara Dynamics was no longer uncertain. It was built on the fierce, uncompromising genius of a father and son, and the moral strength of a CEO who chose to expose a $9 billion betrayal rather than compromise his soul. Elias Thorne knew he hadn't just fixed a truck that day in the desert. He had fixed everything that mattered. And somewhere in the clean, steady hum of the new turbines, a whisper of a promise hung in the desert air. You did it, kiddo. You fixed everything that mattered.